All right, you guys, today we're gonna be taking notes on calculating outliers. If you didn't already label this page 10 in your notebooks, please make sure you do that right now. In order to complete these notes, you're gonna need this note page, a normal writing utensil, 5 highlighters of any color, and then your calculator. Okay, so we have been talking and working in box plots mainly. So on your box plot notes, we briefly mentioned the term outliers, which is a term that's like really different than the bulk of the rest of your data, okay? So again, it's a data value that is unusual in that it is too big or too small compared to the rest of your data. So sometimes we look at outliers and they should be studied in detail because sometimes we as humans can actually get them as a result of an error. All right, whether we get that error in our data collection process by asking questions, or maybe we type it into a website or into our data list or wherever we're recording our responses incorrectly. So that's what an outlier is, and that's what bulk of these notes towards the bottom are going to focus on, all right? However, in order to calculate outliers and to use the formulas that we have down here, we need to find and understand something called the IQR. IQR is short for interquartile range. So inter meaning inside, quartile meaning quarters, right? So we've got the inner quarters. It's essentially from Q3 to Q1. It's the box portion of your box plot. All right, so this gray space is known as your IQR. So back up at the top, again, this is the range or the space between Q1 and Q3. Now, I'm going to be highlighting a lot where Q1 and Q3 get mentioned throughout these notes. So you want to make sure that whatever color you color code these, that you're going to keep it the same. So pick your first highlighter color. I'm going to pick green. And anytime I mention or use Q1, I'm going to highlight it green. Pick your second color. I'm going to use pink. Anytime you use or mention Q3, you're going to highlight it in that color. So I'm going to use these two numbers right now to calculate using our formula what the IQR would be. This is just like finding the normal range of a data set where we use the maximum minus the minimum. However, instead of using the max and the min, I'm going to use Q3 minus Q1. Again, please make sure you are highlighting appropriately. So Q3 was pink, Q1 was green for me. Q3 minus Q1 will equal your IQR. Let's also color code the IQR because we are going to use it multiple times in its own color as well. So that's my third color. I'm going to use yellow. I'm also going to highlight the term over here in yellow. Okay, I'm going to put my highlighters to the side for just a moment. Let's talk about those outliers though and why they might occur in data sets. It can be for a few reasons. The first one is that, again, we have errors in the data that result from data collection or the data entry process. Okay, data collection, again, is like when you're asking people questions, they give you an answer. The data entry process is kind of like where you write it or where you record it. The other reason that you might see outliers is because sometimes the results in the data represent unusual values. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Unusual values. So for example, in our math class, I might say, what is the average age of people in this class? Now you'd probably be thinking, oh, 14 or 15, because most of you guys are freshmen or sophomores. But I'm a part of that class too. I'm not 14 or 15. I'm going to be the outlier because I'm 33. My age is going to throw off the average, all right? So while there's more people who are 14 or 15, my age is like double yours. That is going to be an outlier because it's unusual in comparison to your ages. So now let's move up, and we're gonna do a model together of how to calculate for outliers, okay? So here you're provided a data set, and just like we've been doing in our data set, we're gonna have to calculate pieces of that 5-number summary. So here you'll see median, Q1, Q3, and the IQR. I specifically picked out these numbers because we're gonna be using them. I can't calculate Q1 or Q3 without calculating the median, so I had to include it. Before I begin to calculate, again, I'm currently highlighting Q1 in green and Q3 in pink. So I'm gonna take those two colors right now. I'm gonna start with my Q1 color. And I'm just, again, gonna highlight anywhere I see Q1 occurring. So right now, in these two places, I will come back to this color one more time down here. I'm also gonna color Q3 in pink. And I see that right here. Same thing, I'll use this color again up here. I also am gonna use IQR. So that was yellow for me. I'm calculating it there. I'm using it here and here as well. And you know what I might as well do at the bottom of your box plot? So I would take your Q3 and Q1 colors. So Q1, again, is the beginning of the box right here. Q3 is the end of the box. The IQR is just the space in between. In between those two numbers, okay? All right. So using our data set now, this is already in order, so you don't have to do that step. Let's first calculate the median. So I'm gonna be using my normal writing utensil for that. So to calculate my median, again, I'm crossing off on both sides equally until I get to the middle. Now with this, again, I have two numbers that make up my middle. So my median, first thing I would do is add 14 and 16 together. That's gonna make 30. I would take 30 and I'm gonna divide it by 2 because there are two numbers that I'm considering, and I would get 15. 15 is also in between 14 and 16 directly. And again, that's this middle line that we see right here on our box plot down below. Okay, now that I know my median, it's crucial to remember that when I have two numbers as my median or that contribute to my median, in order to find Q1 and Q3, you have to break them apart. All right, if you just have one number, you would exclude it altogether. You wouldn't use it. So I'm gonna use my green highlighter to find now my Q1. So I've crossed off 2 on both sides. My Q1 is 13, which I can already kind of tell from my box plot down here. I'm gonna do the same thing with my pink highlighter to find my Q3. And we get 21. So now to calculate our IQR, again, looking back up top, I take my Q3 value, which was 21, and I'm gonna subtract my Q1 value, which was 13. Take a moment to use your calculator if you need it. So my IQR, my interquartile range, is equal to 8. Because I used Q3 and Q1 here, I'm gonna go ahead and also highlight those. So Q3 is pink. Oops, Q1 was 13. And the IQR that I got was 8. So yellow. Great. So now that we've calculated these necessary numbers, I'm gonna use these numbers in the two following formulas. One of them is gonna calculate what's called an upper outlier. An upper outlier will typically be closer to your maximum, all right? And your lower outlier is typically gonna be around your minimum or beforehand, okay? So I'm gonna use my last two colors. So for me, I'm gonna use orange to highlight upper outlier and blue for my lower outlier. So for the upper outlier, if the value is more than whatever this equals here, then it's gonna be an outlier. So let's go ahead and calculate that right now. So here's your formula, Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. These two formulas are very similar, but you can see that one of them starts with Q3 and one of them starts with Q1 because they're on opposite ends of my box plot. My Q3 value was 21, and I'm gonna go ahead and highlight that in pink. And I'm gonna add that to 1.5 times my IQR, which was 8. I'm gonna highlight 8 in yellow. So now let's simplify this. 21 plus 1.5 times 8 gives you 12. So 12 is gonna take that spot. 21 plus 12 equals 33. So what this means, and I'm gonna highlight 33 in my orange upper outlier color. What this means is that anything or any number above 33 is an outlier. So looking at this data set, my highest number is 23. So according to this, there is no upper outliers because nothing is bigger than this 33. So now let's do the similar process for the lower outlier. This is where the value is less than the solution of this formula. So in this one, I'm actually gonna start with my Q1 value, which is 13. And instead of adding, I'm subtracting here because it's gonna be in front of, all right? I already know what 1.5 times my IQR is equal to, but to show my work, I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna highlight 8 in my IQR color yellow, and Q1 was green. Oops, my stomach. Now we're gonna go ahead and simplify. So we've got 13 minus 1.5 times 8 is still 12. 13 minus 12 is 1. So that means, I'm gonna take my lower outlier highlighter. Anything less than 1 is going to be an outlier. Now looking at my data set, I do in fact have a number that's smaller than 1, and that's 0. On my box plot, you'll see this dot over here. That is my outlier. So I'm gonna highlight that. So I do have one outlier, it's 0. Once you have finished taking these notes, you can pause this, but you're gonna now transfer to your homework assignment, the outliers homework, all right? We're gonna do one more of these together, just so you guys can see. I'm not gonna highlight this though. So put your name at the top, the day and date. Thankfully, these are relatively short data lists, okay? And this one, not all of them, but this one happens to be in order as I think does the bottom one. So again, you guys are only doing the front side, okay? So again, I only need the median, the Q1, the Q3, and the IQR. Median is the middle. I'm gonna calculate that by crossing off. My median here is 8. And again, because I only have one number, we're gonna exclude 8, and now you're only gonna find the middle number of these 3. That happens to be 3. Q3 is the middle of these 3 numbers. That happens to be 12. Q3, Q1. In order to calculate IQR, you start off with your Q3 value, which is 12, and you're going to subtract your Q1 value, which is 3. 12 minus 3, go ahead and type that into your calculator if you need to. You should get 9. So now I'm going to utilize these numbers to fill in the formula and show the work. So for my upper outlier, again, please write that you use Q3 for the upper outlier and Q1 for the lower outlier. Q3 is 12. Q1 is 3. Here, in these two parentheses, I'm going to use my IQR. Same number in both places. That's 9. All right, now we're going to do our work over here. So we've got 12 plus 1.5 times 9. Let's go ahead and do that. So 1.5 times 9. I get 13.5. I'm going to use 13.5 in both of these. But for right now, let's just focus on this. 12 plus 13.5 equals 25.5. So anything bigger than 25.5 is going to be an outlier. However, my biggest number is 14. So is the maximum here an outlier? Yes or no? You should circle no, because it is not bigger than 25.5. Let's now come to the lower outlier. So again, 3 is where I'm starting. I'm subtracting. I know that 1.5 times 9 makes 13.5. 3 minus 13.5 is negative 10.5. Do I have anything less than negative 10.5 here? No, my lowest number is 1. So this also does not have a lower outlier. The minimum is not an outlier. All right, so you guys are going to do this work down here at the bottom now, okay? Should you have questions, you should always email me. All right, thanks you guys. See you soon.